Hey everyone, Jason Bachman here with a little walkthrough on how I make kicks on the Arturia Minibrute. I've been making a bunch of beats with just this synth and a looper pedal lately and figuring out how to do snares, kicks, hats, and I actually really like the sounds that it can make, the drum sounds it can make, as well as basses and leads and, you know, other more synthy things. So basically what we do for a kick is we drive the filter to self-resonate, and then we move the tone, that tone down into the sub range and play with that as our like core sound. So yeah, so if we just turn up the resonance on the filter, it'll self-oscillate when I play, and you know, that's just the sound of the filter, you know what I mean? If you haven't played with filters that can self-oscillate, it's pretty fun. You can do a lot of effects with it because it's like, you know, it's another tone besides the ones that your source materials, your oscillators are making. So we're not using any sound, you know, any oscillator sources for this. It's just the filter. So we move that down to the sub range, but it drops off. Doesn't go very far. But we can use feedback distortion or feedback overdrive to extend that down into the sub range. And on old Moogs, people would take the headphone out and bring it back into the audio in, and then you turn that up and it creates a feedback loop and creates feedback overdrive, and it's sounds great on leads and stuff like square waves with, you know, feedback overdrive. Sounds awesome, but it can be useful for this too. So if we crank that the whole way up, we get a lot more. It goes down into the sub range. I mean, you really have to juice your output for some of these sounds because you're moving some low tones. Be careful that you don't sweep back up into the high range because it's really loud and things can get really loud at this thing. So usually you're going for something like this. If you want to look at our amp envelope, we have a medium decay, you know, like you'd imagine a kick to sound. There is tone under there. It can sustain, you know, that's like the tone we're looking to record or to use, and we'll tune that eventually too. I'll show you how to do that. So kind of like this. And then what you do, I mean, that's if you're doing really lo-fi stuff, that's just a subby kick, but, you know, it's not all that usable. You know, we want a little bite or a little snap on the front, you know. And you do that by using the filter envelope, and this is why we can make a good kick, because we have separate amplification and filter envelopes. So we can control the tone of it, really have a real snappy attack on the front of it, and then we can have the ringing of the sub material with the amplification envelope. So if we put a little, it, you know, gives us that. And just to show you what's actually happening here, there's like zap, you know. So we want something in here that just sounds like the beater on a kick, you know. And this is pretty harsh, you know, but I'm just kind of trying to get the timing right here. And there are ways to mellow out how harsh that is, because that's kind of zappy. So I can do less envelope. You know, no envelope is just this thumpy one. We keep adding a little more. This might be appropriate depending on your beat. You know, depends how much you want. You can also bring the resonance down a little bit. With this much overdrive, you like don't need all of this resonance for it to self-oscillate, and it takes away some of the edge too. So if you have like something aggressive, you know, you can do that, which still has nice bottom end, you know, but isn't as clicky on top. So, you know, that's like a nice sound. It really depends on your song, you know, you set all these things to fit your song. Then you can play with like, if I have a short release, if I just, you know, like ping the key, you can have shorter releases than when you hold it. So there's like a tail, but these are shorter. Because if you leave this long, it like distorts over on itself. You hear that? Short, long. Great. You know, like that way, I mean, you can play a lot with a line. You know, that's usable, and you can play with a little bit of character, right? So that's the kind of stuff I mess around with. I could tell you these settings, but it's going to be a little different because it's so finicky. So just play with your envelope amount, resonance, the cutoff where you want it, and then these timings to get the sound you want. I almost always have the decay and the release the same on the filter envelope. Sustain, nothing. Attack, nothing. Then what I like to do is tune the sub, depending on the song. It doesn't have to be the root of the song, but if it's something that is in key, it'll be less offensive and it won't clash with stuff. Especially if you're doing long, boomy, like, you know, what people call 808 subs, where it's actually the bass line. You want it to be in key, right? So I bring up the sub oscillator, just a sine wave on that, and you can hear where that note is, right? So say your song's in E flat. So if you can match this to E flat, you know, somewhere down around here, right? You know, it eventually gets there. So even if I don't have that sub oscillator, you know, this will fit with an E flat beat. I actually have a little thing on my looper I'll bring up that, and it happens to be an E flat. So now, if you want to give it a little tone trail, you can leave that in. That gives it more trail. And that is a nice 808 kind of kick, you know. So anyway, let me bring this loop up and we'll play with it a little bit.